He was just unloading boxes when the police rolled up. Sirens, flashing lights. All because a woman across the street thought he didn't belong. But when the truth came out, even the cops were stunned. You won't believe who the man really was, or what he did next. It was a quiet Thursday morning on Willow Creek Drive. The kind of morning where time moved slowly. The sun filtered gently through the trees. Birds chirped from the rooftops. Sprinklers whispered across front lawns, and the hum of distant lawnmowers blended with the calm. It was peaceful, predictable, safe. From the second-floor window of her small white cottage, Karen Walker, a 72-year-old widow, sipped her morning tea as she peered out through her familiar lace curtains. She had lived on Willow Creek for over 40 years. She knew every neighbor, every mailbox, every car that belonged on this street. Nothing ever happened here without her noticing. And this morning, something was different. Across the street, a man was unloading a U-Haul van in front of the old Davis house, the one with the blue shutters that had recently been sold. He was black, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a gray hoodie and black sweatpants. He moved quickly, lifting heavy boxes with ease and disappearing into the house. Before returning for another load, Karen's heart quickened. She didn't recognize him. There was no sold sign still posted, no introductions made, no wave to the neighbors. Something about it, or maybe everything about it, made her stomach tighten. Her mind started to race. Was he supposed to be there? Had anyone seen him before? Why didn't he have a moving crew? Why no uniform? Karen clutched her phone and dialed 911. "There's a suspicious man breaking into the Davis house," she said firmly. "He's hauling boxes inside. Please hurry." Minutes later, the stillness shattered. Two squad cars rounded the corner, red and blue lights flashing against the calm morning. Sirens howled briefly, then cut out. Neighbors opened their doors, drawn by the noise, watching. The man stood still, hands raised slightly, a puzzled look on his face, calm, alert, but clearly aware that his presence had just triggered something bigger than a move. "Sir, can we see some ID?" one of the officers asked, maintaining a professional tone, though his hand rested just a little too firmly on the grip of his holstered weapon. The man looked at him calmly, raising an eyebrow. There was no panic in his face, no fear, just a flicker of disappointment behind his composed expression. Then, with a slight smile, he said, "Of course, officer. My name's Marcus Bryant. I just bought this house. Moved in today." He moved slowly, deliberately, reaching into the side pocket of his jacket and pulling out his wallet. From it, he handed over his driver's license and a neatly folded document, the deed to the house, printed and signed just 2 weeks earlier. The officer glanced down, scanning the information. His partner stepped in to take a closer look, reading the name, the address, the notarized stamp. Within moments, their posture shifted. The tension seemed to evaporate. One officer handed the papers back and offered a nod, followed by an apologetic tone. "Mr. Bryant, we're very sorry for the confusion. We had a report of suspicious activity, but everything looks in order. Welcome to the neighborhood." Marcus gave a respectful nod, still calm. "No problem, officers. I understand you're just doing your job." From across the street, behind a porch column, Karen stood frozen. Her face had drained of color, then flushed with shame. She had just called the police on a man who not only had every right to be there, but whose background was more impressive than anyone on the block. Marcus wasn't just moving in. He was a decorated Marine officer, now a Harvard-educated civil rights attorney, moving back to care for his aging mother. And Karen had judged him before ever saying hello. That evening, the calm of Willow Creek Drive was replaced with digital chaos. The neighborhood Facebook group, usually filled with lost pet posts, bake sale flyers, and lawn care recommendations, lit up with an explosion of opinions. Everyone was talking about it. Screenshots of Marcus's LinkedIn profile began circulating. Retired Marine officer, civil rights attorney, community advocate. A few neighbors even shared pictures of him at charity events and giving keynote speeches. One post read, "Karen called the cops on a war hero." Another said, "Marcus is one of the kindest, most respected attorneys in the state. He's literally on the board of 2 nonprofits." People weren't just shocked, they were disappointed. The quiet, polite, always waving Karen Walker had called 911 because a black man was moving into his own home. The comments poured in like a storm. She just saw a black man and assumed the worst. She's old. Maybe she got confused. Doesn't excuse it, though. I used to think Karen was harmless. Now I'm not so sure. For the first time in decades, Karen didn't sit on her porch for her usual 6 p.m. tea. The cushions on her white wicker chair remained untouched. The lights in her living room stayed off. She sat in the dark with her phone buzzing on the coffee table, too afraid to look. Some messages were sympathetic, others scathing. And deep down, she knew she had messed up. Then came a soft knock. At the front door, Karen's breath caught. She stood slowly, uncertain of what or who waited on the other side. She peeked through the peephole and saw him. Marcus, standing there in jeans, a blue polo shirt, and holding something in his hands. It wasn't paperwork. It wasn't a lawyer's letter. It was a tray of warm, homemade cookies. Karen opened the door slowly, her hands trembling just slightly. Her eyes met Marcus's, and for a moment, she braced herself for anger, for harsh words. Maybe even a confrontation she didn't think she could handle. But instead, she was met with warmth there. He stood, smiling gently, holding out a tray of chocolate chip cookies on a ceramic plate. "Hi, Ms. Walker," he said softly. "I just wanted to say, no hard feelings. Moving can be stressful. And I get it. The world's a complicated place." Karen stared at him, unsure how to respond. She expected him to be furious, to turn his back, or to shame her in front of everyone. But instead, he brought cookies. You're not mad?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus chuckled, a deep, kind laugh that filled the space between them. "I've seen worse," he said. "Trust me. And besides, I figured a neighbor like you probably makes great lemonade." Karen blinked, caught between disbelief and guilt, then smiled, just a little. "Come in," she said, opening the door wider. "Please." They sat in her cozy living room, surrounded by doilies, old framed photographs, and the faint scent of lavender air freshener. She poured him a glass of lemonade, as if to live up to his joke. Over the next hour, they shared their stories. Karen talked about the neighborhood back in the 1970s, when kids played in the street until sunset and everyone knew each other by name. Marcus told her about life in the Marines, about nights sleeping under stars in the desert, and how he'd gone to law school using the GI Bill. By the end, Karen's eyes were red. She wiped her face with a tissue. "I'm so sorry," she said quietly. "I judged you without knowing a thing about you." Marcus gave her a slow nod. "A lot of people do," he replied. "But the real test is what we do after." The following week, something truly unexpected happened, something that hadn't happened on Willow Creek Drive in years. Karen, once the quiet observer of the neighborhood, posted a message to the community forum. Not a recipe, not a lost cat alert. This time, it was a heartfelt public apology. "I made a terrible mistake," her message began. "I let fear and bias cloud my judgment. I saw someone I didn't recognize and assumed the worst. Marcus is a kind, thoughtful, and generous man, and a gift to this community. I hope we can all take this as a lesson to pause, think, and act with compassion rather than suspicion." The post hit home. Within hours, it had dozens of likes and comments. Not just people forgiving her, but thanking her for admitting her wrong, for taking responsibility, for showing that growth was still possible, no matter your age. Takes courage to admit this publicly. Much respect, Karen. What a turnaround. This could have gone so differently. Thank you both for setting an example. This is what change looks like. Encouraged by the wave of positivity, Karen and Marcus decided to do something even more meaningful. That weekend, they co-hosted a neighborhood barbecue in Marcus's backyard. He grilled ribs and burgers. Karen brought her famous potato salad. Neighbors came in droves, curious, open-hearted, some even bringing dishes of their own. Kids played tag under the trees. Music played softly. Conversations flowed freely between families who hadn't spoken in months. And at one point, Karen stood beside Marcus, holding her lemonade, and spoke into a quiet crowd. He could have held a grudge. Instead, he brought cookies and taught me something I'll never forget. From that day forward, every Sunday afternoon like clockwork, Karen and Marcus could be seen on her front porch, laughing, sipping lemonade, and reminding everyone that real change doesn't come from shouting. It comes from listening. What started as a call full of fear ended with friendship and truth. And in a world quick to judge, Sometimes it takes just one honest conversation to change everything. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss a story like this one. Thanks for watching.